In 2012, a young woman named Emily was admitted to a hospital in rural Virginia. She was suffering from a rare form of cancer and needed to undergo extensive chemotherapy treatments. Despite the severity of her illness, Emily remained hopeful and determined to beat the cancer. However, something strange started happening to her during her hospital stay. At night, when the halls were quiet and the nurses were away, she would hear strange noises coming from her room. She described the sounds as whispers and shuffling footsteps, and they seemed to be getting louder every night. At first, she thought it was just her imagination playing tricks on her, but then things started to escalate. Objects in her room would move without explanation, and her bed would shake violently. She tried to ignore it and told herself that it was just the effects of the medication, but deep down, she knew that something was wrong. One night, Emily woke up to find a dark figure standing at the foot of her bed. She couldn't make out any features, but she could feel its presence, and it sent shivers down her spine. She tried to scream, but no sound would come out of her mouth. The figure just stood there, staring at her before disappearing into thin air. After that night, Emily's condition started to deteriorate rapidly. Her doctors were baffled, and no amount of medication seemed to be able to help her. She became weaker and weaker until she passed away a few weeks later. After her death, the hospital staff began to notice strange things happening in her room. They would hear the same whispers and shuffling footsteps that Emily had described, and some even reported seeing the same dark figure that had appeared to her. Some staff members refused to enter the room altogether, claiming that they could feel a malevolent presence inside. The hospital tried to cover up the incidents, but rumors started to spread, and patients and staff alike began to avoid Emily's room at all costs. Eventually, the room was closed off and left empty, but the strange occurrences continued throughout the hospital. To this day, the hospital is said to be haunted by the ghost of Emily and the malevolent presence that followed her. The hospital staff has never been able to explain the strange occurrences, and many believe that Emily's tragic death left a mark on the hospital forever. In the mid-1990s, a hospital in a small town in the United States was known for its cutting-edge medical procedures and state-of-the-art equipment. Patients came from far and wide to receive treatment at the hospital, but little did they know that something sinister was happening behind the scenes. The hospital had a secret basement where a group of doctors performed experimental procedures on patients who were deemed to have little chance of survival. They promised families that they would try everything possible to save their loved ones, but in reality, they were conducting illegal and unethical medical experiments on them. One patient in particular, a young woman named Sarah, was admitted to the hospital with a rare form of cancer. She was promised a new treatment that would cure her illness, but little did she know that she was about to become a victim of the doctor's twisted experiments. Sarah was taken to the basement and subjected to a grueling and painful procedure. She was never told what was being done to her, and she was too weak to protest or fight back. Her family was told that the procedure was a success, but Sarah knew that something was wrong. As the days went on, Sarah's condition worsened. Her skin turned a sickly gray, and she began to experience excruciating pain throughout her body. She knew that she was going to die, and she begged the doctors to tell her family what they had done to her, but they refused. Sarah passed away a few weeks later, and her family was devastated. They demanded answers from the hospital, but they were met with silence. It wasn't until years later, when an investigation was launched into the hospital's practices, that the truth was revealed. The doctors who had performed the illegal procedures were arrested, and the hospital was shut down. The families of the victims were finally able to learn the truth about what had happened to their loved ones, but the memories of the hospital's horrors would haunt them forever. Today, the hospital stands abandoned and overgrown, a reminder of the atrocities that occurred within its walls. Local legends say that the spirits of the patients who died in the hospital still haunt the building, and some claim to have heard ghostly screams and moans coming from the abandoned basement. The hospital serves as a grim reminder of the dangers of unchecked medical experimentation and the importance of patient safety.